In this episode, I talked to Eugene de Gee, Senior Manager of Workforce Management at Luno out of South Africa. This is a really fascinating discussion. We get into a range of different topics, everything from planning in volatile environments such as the cryptocurrency market, where a single tweet may fundamentally affect your entire outlook, how South Africa has been dealing with load shedding, which they've been dealing with for a number of years, but may well be affecting Europe this winter, what with the gas challenges that we're having out of the Russia and Ukraine war, the evolution of the South African contact industry and how mature workforce management is in the region, how Six Sigma is an excellent complement to workforce management, and then also what you as a workforce management team should be doing when everything's going well. And Eugene goes into talking a little bit around volume stress testing, which is something I think is a really great piece of advice. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you do too. All right. Super pleased to have Eugene de Gee on the podcast today. It's been a long time coming. I think we had a couple of times where we tried to record this in the past. So I'm super pleased now to finally get you, and to have some of your experiences is great. And also to have somebody from the part of the world, which we haven't had anybody, I don't believe, on our podcast so far in terms of Africa and South Africa. So great to have you, Eugene. Thanks for making the time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's an honor and a pleasure to finally meet you. I know that we had few conversations offline, and quite excited to be on the podcast.
For our listeners, it'd be great for you just to give a brief history of your experience, if that's okay, Eugene.
Sure, not a problem. So, like most in South Africa, I stumbled across the BPO industry, and taking that break from university and suddenly taking a service associate job, I found myself in kind of, flowing through things, realizing that a career can actually be made in this industry. And soon to realize, WFM was the destiny I want, really, or the journey that I wanted to take. At the time, I think in South Africa, the only real entry point to WFM was real time. So kind of leveraging of mathematics and the technical aspects, I found myself doing some job shadowing, just kind of popping my head into conversations where I didn't belong at times, but I did join. And over the course of that period, I've worked for a lot of UK and international businesses, and followed through the journey from real time to planner to workforce manager, and following the technical aspects of my journey was never easy, because if you don't have a mentor along that journey, you seem to struggle. And podcasts like this, I think, is probably the exceptional point of how people coming into the industry can learn a bit more about WFM.
I think that's an interesting point. So you picked out a mentor early in your career to kind of help you with that side of things.
I think, in all aspects, and not just in WFM, but in any career, you do need a mentor. And a mentor can change over time. Certainly the mentors that I had over a period of time, one was an operation director. He knew probably a little bit about WFM, but he could guide me on the principles, and that was important, how to tackle a difficult conversation, especially when you're changing people's shifts, and the war is coming down on you. How do you deal with those kind of conversations and still have people on your side? And then over the latter part, I kind of leveraged off my manager. At times, I still reach out to him. He's probably still my mentor, and just kind of having career conversations, especially when opportunities does come about. You want to know that someone has your best interest as well, and that was probably the best thing that could have happened as well. Finding someone that you can trust in the industry that's gone through probably the same pain points that you and I have gone through, Doug.
Yeah, it's I think it's super important. I think I look back on my career, and there's definitely 3, maybe 4 people that stand out that helped me in one way or another. They weren't always the most positive personalities.
Yeah, I know
So,
that.
sometimes you can learn from kind of like what feels extremely painful at the time. And you look back
Yeah.
at the time, you're like, yeah, this is not somebody that I'm enjoying working with. But you look back actually with quite a lot of positivity because of the things you learn. Sometimes also things not to do as well.
I think that that's probably a good reflection point where, if you look, I mean, if I look back 3, 4 years ago, what I considered a real painful period, it's helped me through the journey of how I am today and how I tackle things today. Looking at especially in the industry that I'm in now, the crypto space, it's a bit volatile. And you've got to create you've got to create an agile model that can, counter that volatility within the industry at the moment. And without that difficult period, I don't think I would have been here and been able to manage that right now.
I mean, I know that some of the things that we talked about prior to this podcast recording is like, and I want to get onto those topics with you as well.
Sure.
But I am also interested as well in terms, what is it like planning, such a volatile environment with cryptocurrency?
Well, firstly, the forecast is a bit challenging to say the least. Because one tweet can kind of change our world a little bit. And we've seen that in the past. I think the one thing is, there's a common theme where people say you've got to learn from your mistakes. And in the crypto space, I think that's probably the most important thing is how do we not prevent a situation like that again? From a planning perspective, I think it's just essentially working with the business in the best way possible. We will all like to live in an ideal world where we can, get the capacity plan out within the relative weeks and then change people's shifts. But what I found in this space is, everyone is working towards one goal, and that's the probably the most exciting part about being in this industry at the moment. It's relatively, things are changing so quickly, so rapidly that if we don't remain agile, we kind of lose ground on the business. And to work in a space where everyone is fighting for that same goal, it's amazing. It's you get those companies. I've been in a few companies before where the values are just written on the wall. And here people are actually living it by remaining to focused on what we want to achieve as a business. And at times things do go the wrong way, but it's important that we tackle things in the right way. I think my team is still learning about how to work through these processes. We utilizing the relative systems that comes available. And managing the customer journey is probably the most critical part. With if you disrupt the customer, especially in this kind of market, and people's financial status can change immediately. You disrupt that journey, things can change for you quite rapidly.
Interesting. You used a word there, agility. I think sometimes, especially sort of in old school ways of thinking when it came to workforce management, you set a plan out and you almost got frustrated when you had to change the plan. But I guess in a volatile world like that, it almost makes maybe your kind of short-term, short-range, real-time planning to be probably as equally as important as your long-term. Would that be fair? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think, we have to partner with other companies in order to ensure that the customer's journey is successful. If that partnership, fails us, we ultimately need to still ensure that the customer is looked after. And that's where the short-term range planning comes into play. What sort of responses can we share with the customer? What sort of short-term issues that kind of managing shrinkage for one would be the easiest. An example from an associate perspective is, how do we leverage off the shrinkage? How do we leverage off increasing the CPH to make sure that our customers that doesn't stand past that service level requirement. And I think what has aided me in this journey, that before I've joined Luno as a business, I became certified as a Lean Six Sigma black belt.
Yeah. It's a great mix. Great mix. I really think so. Yeah.
I would encourage everyone to kind of go through that relative belts and methodologies. Just, it's one, you don't have to use it like for like, but find a way that you can incorporate it into your business. And that's a journey I take my team through now as well, getting them to understand the methodologies we use and how we can incorporate it into our day-to-day or, medium to long-term plans. Particularly change it's probably the one thing that's consistent in our business right now. And if we don't kind of manage or impact that change, we will fall apart. And I think that the team my team has relatively took it on in quite well, where they're getting certified as, Lean Six Sigma green belts and challenge, and which is great because they started challenging me on methodologies and why we should doing things. And that's only going to be improving mine and the team skills by doing that.
Yeah, I've long believed that they're brilliant mixes in terms of looking at a process end to end, and also the methodology around how to manage a project. I think it's really spot on. In fact, I've preached it for so many years without actually getting myself certified. But yeah, believe it or not, in September I start towards my black belt. So I thought, if I'm going to do it, I might as well go full in.
Yeah.
For me, it's going to be a bit of a long journey there, but I 100% see the value of it. I think you're onto something there for sure.
Yeah, and look, I think the one thing that probably escapes most is you don't have to be completely certified in order to apply a methodology. Sometimes people chase that little paper at the end of the day, and that's important as well. But I do think applying it in your business from a practical sense is probably more important than getting that piece of paper to say that you are certified. And I'm all about kind of giving time back to my team, and how we do that is improving those sorts of processes and challenging how we do things on a day-to-day basis. It's aided us quite well so far. I'm quite excited to see how the future will pan out a bit, when everyone is certified and everyone is challenging each other on these kind of processes.
Absolutely, yeah, brilliant. Okay, so before this, before we were talking about this episode, we were talking about kind of the subjects which I think would be really interesting for WFM listeners. And I mentioned it right at the start in terms of South Africa is we haven't spoke to anybody in South Africa yet. I know that the contact center industry in general was starting to explode. The last few years has really shown that. And I believe the kind of the workforce management profession within South Africa is also starting to mature as a discipline. With many more organizations, I see sort of more professionals propping up more and more in my LinkedIn feeds and connections and such. Can you tell me a little bit more about this phenomenon and why you think it's come about, and kind of where is it in terms of maturity at the moment?
Well, look, so South Africa has been nominated as the destination of choice a few occasions, right? And I think that's part and parcel of why the industry is growing so rapidly within in our environment. It also shows that there's a trust that's listed to South Africa. I started this journey 15 years ago as an associate. So there's been some testing moments where, and I think fundamentally you're coming into this industry as straight out of uni. You're thinking of this is probably going to be a part-time job just to kind of feed what I need to do. And the first thing that people think it's simply just an investment because of the the rate of exchange. I think then what people start to realize there's actually such an hunger for people in South Africa that is keen to change the way of how we do things. I'm personally of the view that currently, if you study anything, the world is moving so fast that by the time you're done studying, that whole process has changed. Right? So
I found that.
So you have to keep yourself up to speed, and I think from a South Africa perspective, we have done that quite well. The infrastructures that they've put in place from a contact centers or BPOs in that we can serve multi-clients, not just on one channel. 15 years ago, it was just simply voice. Now we're doing chat and email. We're doing different varieties. There's a few businesses that is launching videos as well. So that's quite challenging. It comes with its pros and cons, of course. But we're growing. I think we're growing in the right way. And particularly from a WFM, we are maturing slowly. but I'm comfortable in the fact that we are maturing in the right way rather than, just simply taking a role because it's the easiest thing to do and we'll learn on the job. One of the greatest fears that I have is taking a role that I'm not equipped for, and then simply failing within the first 3 months. And that's the kind of process that we've put in, this building blocks that's been putting into different call centers now to ensure that people have the right skill before they even get into an agent, right? And that course is actually opening them to the view that there's an analytical roles, there's WFM, there's product, there's programming, there's different types of roles you can kind of find yourself in. And I think the term contact center, it just creates that we are simply people behind a desk with earphones in, and we're just clicking away, where there's different aspects to it. And that's where the market is right now. They're finding out there's a number of roles in this industry, and it's creating a space where a lot more customers can invest in South Africa, because of that skill type that's being more mature.
That's a really good point. I think the people that often fall into the contact center industry, they don't realize just what career paths you can come out of it. And I think certainly it's been a huge part of my career, and I'm very, very grateful for what the contact industry has provided in terms of opportunity for me. And I would encourage anybody that kind of looks at it as a short-term stopping gap, that they're probably looking at it in the wrong way, because it really is a great way to learn how a business works from the inside out. And talking to customers through the start kind of gives you that customer obsession that if you take around, you take into your journey wherever it might be, and even into kind of analytical roles, sets you up for success.
And I think that there's probably more of investment right now, Doug, is like a lot of the kind of extra activities or courses and certifications that I've done has been through the businesses, right? It's they're investing in the individuals in the right way to ensure that obviously is the return on investment, which everyone wants, but you as an individual kind of gain so much from that. You're learning how to operate in your role practically, and you're getting the theoretical part sorted out while you're studying as well. So that fundamentally kind of can set you apart from most people that are first doing the theory part in university versus gaining the momentum, and you can actually apply these relative skills in the business.
Yeah, great points. One thing that I was keen to ask you about, because as a senior leader in workforce management within South Africa, I guess over the last 10 years or so, I've been hit up myself several times for roles in South Africa. I've not decided to take one of those. What I do continuously see is senior WFM roles advertised and targetedly specific for expats. I hope I'm not kind of making something out of turn here. Is that because there's shortages of experienced workforce management practitioners, or is that for other reasons, do you feel?
I think simply it's a combination of both, right? There's a small pool of senior people that could actually do the things that you can do, the skill sets that you provide. And obviously I know a bit about your experience from travel and how you've shared that with it on LinkedIn. So I think there's definitely a small portion of individuals that are at the right skill type and maturely, that are able to have the right conversations with customers or clients. And then on the flip side, I think the expats that has been within the industry has matured a few. Right. I will personally say, if you ever come down to South Africa, it's sunny, the beaches are here, so it's good. It's a good life. It's a good life. Don't get me wrong. And I've been to the UK and to Europe a few times, so it's obviously there's the cons of being in that side. So I do think that there's been a few leaders that has come over, matured a few individuals, and it's unfortunate that we kind of we have to share that skill type. We have to kind of gain momentum. Because at the pace that the rate of the business is growing, what you find is, and I think I've seen a personal cycle that has taken place where one person leaves a role, and then you find the next leader, stepping in, and we go through a cycle where we've been through a few companies in the area. What that kind of brings about is the next person that's waiting for that challenge hasn't had the opportunity to do so. And I think that's changed probably in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
We're noticing that at the rate of which the business is growing, we can't continue to recycle, senior leaders into different businesses because the industry is quite small. I've recently found out that, I've speak to one person in one company, they join another company as a outsourcing provider, and I'm connecting with them again, so the industry is quite small that you tend to kind of work with the same individuals, kind of setting the milestones for new businesses that are coming in. But in the last 3 years, I think we've kind of changed that mechanism to ensure that other individuals get the opportunity to grow. For me personally, I try to keep in touch with anybody that has worked with me in the team. Try to keep, if you have any questions, career conversations. If I can never be considered that I've achieved anything that I've achieved all on my own, it's only by my family, by the mentors that I've had, the team that I've built up, that got me to this point where I am. And I think other people are quickly realizing, there's tons of leadership courses that you attend to where you are now reflecting and looking in the mirror and say, you can't keep doing this on your own. You have to give someone the other opportunity to succeed as well.
One theory that I don't know if it's directly linked to this, but I actually had a conversation recently with somebody on LinkedIn who was asking me about whether or not they should pursue a more technical career path, say down the data science route, versus say going into workforce management leadership. And it was difficult for me to advise, first of all, because I didn't know the person that well. So I think, it depends. But I had this kind of thought process or theory that what makes a really good analyst doesn't always make a good leader. I think I don't know if you share that or have any thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I'll reflect on the recent conversation that you had. It was with the recruiter. I forget his name, so apologies.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on it there as well. Sometimes, having the best technical aspects does not ensure that you are going to groom the next individual quite correctly, because, and I personally feel that, from my perspective, I try to pick out individuals, and whether they leave my team, the first conversation that I have with every individual that joins my team is, I look after a team, not just one individual. And if that individual is falling short, I have to consider the team as the first priority. The second thing that I tell them is my responsibility as the leader of this function is not to grow them for the business, is to grow them for their career, right? That could be within the business that we operate. It could be another company. And I feel probably more reward than most people do when I see someone else succeed, because I know that opens a door for someone else down the line. We can't keep holding the old theory when you work into a business and you get that after 30 years you get that watch. That's simply a thing of the past now. And after 3 years you're considered tenured in the business. You should be getting that gold watch already at that time. So I think, to your point, yes, leadership plays probably a major part. And I mean, through the companies that I've gone, the first thing that we do is, I've been at Amazon, great leadership courses that they offer upfront, as if you are a manager, and that doesn't stop right there. So the minute that you become a manager and you pass probation and you're challenging the team, you're going on to the next leadership course to challenge your way of thinking again. And that's been consistent through the industry, likely I said probably in the last 3 years, where companies are putting a lot of these senior stakeholders on these courses about leadership, and that's changing the mindset of individuals.
Yeah, exactly. Because even if you're not in a management position, you can still be a thought leader, and that's, I think, very, very critical for anybody to think about, no matter what the role, but particularly in workforce management as well, because a lot of the time for stakeholders, it's considered to be a bit of a dark art, not always fully understood. But being a thought leader and being able to promote, educate, and lead other people into kind of the right direction, I think is part and parcel of being great at workforce management.
And it can be lonely on the top, though, right? So why do you want to do it all on your own? I don't know about you, Doug, but definitely don't have all the answers to every question, you know. So,
No,
and
no.
I tend to ask my team for advice. You know, tell me your views on something, because I mean that's the best way of making a decision. You know, having other people's views rather than, you know, leveraging off your own knowledge, and suddenly it's not the right decision for a team or for a business.
Interesting. No, I think they're really good insights into prospective leaders, particularly in the workforce management scene as well, because I think that often you tend to attract analytical types, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make a really great leader. And if not a management leadership role, then certainly a thought leader. I think everyone can do that and encourage them to, because that takes their career to the next step for sure.
Definitely.
Just want to switch kind of the subjects a bit, if that's okay. So another question I was keen to ask you was about. So I know that the contact industry has been growing, but on the same token, some of South Africa's infrastructure has not been as helpful to that growth. Let's say. So I read about, for example, sort of nationwide power outages, or I think they're called load shedding.
Load shedding. That's right.
How does that affect operations, and what sort of adjustments do you have to make in the plans to accommodate that? Or is that a thing of the past now, and I'm just reading old stories?
Well, thank you for putting it such in a diplomatic way as in saying helpful. You know, so like load shedding, it's probably been in existence since 2007. So in staying, you know, if you've been in South Africa, it's become sort of second nature, because I wouldn't say it's regularly submitted. There are times where, you know, we go through these periods where there are load shedding, and I think from a personal level, in a residential point of view, to have power for to have no power for 2 hours, it's either one, you are sitting alone in a dark room, which is not really helpful. Or two, you're connecting with your family more than you did before. You know, so there's pros and cons, right? So something we as a family try to do when there's you know, kind of load shedding at you know, a difficult time during probably supper time, or you know, 7 or 8 p.m. is, you know, get a few torches out. We take out the card games. I have 2 kids and my lovely wife. We try to become competitive at home, you know, in a game of cards. So there are pros and cons, but I think from a business perspective, infrastructures, you know, prior to COVID, it's infrastructures have been set up that way to manage those kind of load shedding requirements with the generators and relative contingency plans. You know, so we do dry runs of potentially, if the business was to go down for 3 to 4 hours, and, you know, do we go to our dark site? Do we shift people around? And I think a lot of the kind of fintech environments, or, you know, other companies have offered UPSs to individuals that's recently joined. So I have a UPS at home, so Wi-Fi never goes down at my home, which is probably a joy for my kids more than me. But you get UPSs to them. So there are options that we do have. I think in the early parts, just before COVID, there wasn't really a challenge, because business used to operate business as usual. The generators kick in, everyone's at the office, there's no challenges. You know, during COVID period, it was probably a bit more challenging, given the fact that everyone was at home. You know, not everyone had a laptop. Some people had, you know, the standalone machines. To getting a UPS for a standalone machine and the Wi-Fi, it's 2 different places in the household. So how does that work? There's a lot of learnings that we could have taken from an industry perspective to ensure that, one, our clients are looked after in the right way. But we looked at it at different environments. Now it still does occur, which is probably the most saddest part, is considering that it's been around 2007. But from a business perspective, people have become, you know, more agile to it. They have UPSs at home. There's we operate as a business within Luno as remote but reachable. So that doesn't mean you have to be in the office all the time. I come in once a week or twice a week, and from home I don't have an issue. Those that prefer to be in the office, they are welcome to come in anytime. There's no load shedding. They get a free meal, you know, so something that you might not get at home sometimes. But we've become more probably known for the fact that how we can come around these situations.
Mm.
I think it's also it's probably a good selling point from a customer perspective to know that we have an issue, but we have ways of addressing it. You know, these are we and it's fairly documented, Doug. I mean, the BCP plans that I've seen is probably about 60 to 70 pages long, which is probably the most reading I've ever done in my life. But it on what happens if we go dark, you know. But I think we've come a long way. We've learned a few things on how to adapt it. But from an associate perspective, we're looking after the customer. It's what much more well versed than we did in the past.
I mean, so you mentioned around sort of dry runs and these types of things, and obviously reading through the however many pages of the BCP plan, which I've been through a few, which in the hundreds as well. How involved do you get in those BCP plans or planning or execution of the parts of the plan from a workforce management perspective?
Yeah, I think, look, it's the workforce. You always have a part to play. We say it's unplanned, but we do consider the kind of notion of how many hours we expected to lose during this, you know. So those are factors we have to consider, and it's factors that we have to run up the food chain, unfortunately, to ensure that we don't fail completely. I think from a real-time perspective, it's really on the day to ensure that you as a real-time analyst and team managers is ensuring that, you know, the relative steps are taken. You know, the right individual is phoned firstly to make sure that the systems is put into place. You know, we got plans where we can, you know, activate a page perhaps where chat is down and we're moving them to email and those sorts of things, right? We do it quite regularly to ensure that the test does take place and we can document it and ensure that we are within our compliance measures. Probably the most challenging part about that is essentially what I'm trying to consider now at the moment. And in some instances, you know, you go through in WFM, I was told this a while back, there's always this honeymoon phase where things are just going great. There's no issues, you know, reporting. And then there's this period of complete chaos, you know, complete chaos. And I mean, I always try to tell the team is if we can do the right things in the quiet periods, doing those right things in the dark periods is going to be absolutely easy because we're doing it consistently. You know, and I've kind of tried to drill it into the team. It's continuously to do these things. So when we have these honeymoon phases, we do kind of volume stress testing. You know, just kind of remove a certain number of associates.
That's next level.
See how the business is operating. Do we operate at the, you know, the right CPH? Is people kind of, you can identify probably those associates from a real-time perspective that when volumes are high, I need to take a personal break now, you know. Those are the things that comes out of that volume stress testing. So, you know, okay, these are the relative steps that we've took. These are the risks that we identified. And then we play that through into the next stress testing. You know, can we reduce those number of risks to ensure when we go into this kind of chaos period, we're sitting in a manageable situation. People are following the right steps, and we got these lessons learned put in place. So that's something that we are going through at the moment. We try to do it as regularly as possible to ensure that people are aware that, you know, it's not always going to be a honeymoon phase. There are going to be those moments of chaos, but you've got to be ready.
Yeah. It's interesting actually, because whenever I come across a workforce management team that says, "Oh, we're quite quiet," I'm thinking you're probably not doing your job properly, because it may not feel like you may be in control of all your service levels and everything's going in the right direction, but only just around the corner is going to be something that's going to trip you up. And it's that preparation that you do prior to this. I think what you're talking about, that stress, that volume stress testing that's brilliant, really next level. And I think so many teams, they kind of almost take this deep breath. Oh, thank goodness for that. But actually, you know, you can minimize the next big impact by doing that. And I think it's very nice.
You really don't want a kind of issue to occur on a Friday evening at 7 p.m. when you're going home. That's probably the worst possible time. So and I think that's what we want to prepare our teams for, is those worst moments. And I think, you know, for my leadership team is I try to kind of ensure that they talk their teams through those kind of steps. Do we if we have it documented, do you know, like, kind of, sit around the table, do you know what step to take, do you know what the relative systems is? Because ultimately you don't want to be phoning someone that is actually just enjoying their family time, or just found this little moment of peace, and then you hear that the system has gone down. What do I do next? You want to ensure that everyone understands their role in the business, and they fulfill it when it's required.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk to you about this forever, and I think, by the way, the what I didn't say at the start, but like that load shedding and the things that South Africa have put in place, like the UPSs at home and these types of things, they're not being thought through yet in Europe, and it's going to be an interesting winter, I think, for Europe, because with the potential of something similar in terms of brownouts and these types of things because of energy disruption because of what's going on in Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
We could be looking to South Africa what you've done and learn from it, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think that's the fundamental thing, is what your podcast has brought about. I've seen you respond on a few questions that people have asked. Is fundamentally making everyone understand that these kind of issues is not something that will never be at your doorstep. And you can ask those questions. The most experienced person in the world might not know the answer, but there's someone sitting that has been gone through this for probably about the past 10 years that could say, try this, have you looked at that? And that could be a solution. And it's bringing this community, this WFM community, closer. And that's what I found probably the most helpful way. I've shared a few links from your page to my team and say, have a read through. We'll discuss it on Monday. And that's been helpful for people that have, is kind of early in the stage of WFM. They don't understand how do you work out, how does Erlang work? Those kind of things is, and that's where we find these kind of bringing this community together and asking these kind of questions and finding these answers is much more simpler, brought about these podcasts and groups within LinkedIn and the channels that we offer.
Yeah, brilliant. So I could talk, like I say, I could talk to you for hours. I think, though, before we do go, I think I'd love to hear, just shift gears a bit and take advantage of kind of your definite passion in workforce management. Maybe share what you think would be a great story for our audience. Something that, I don't know, around maybe like the stakeholders, understanding their point of views. I think that's a definitely interesting slant.
Yeah. I mean, when I started in this business quite a while back, I was probably a little bit more strict than I am today.
Yeah, me too.
So I thought that it was all business. Nothing needs to be relationship here.
Yeah.
And that probably was kind of a roadblock that I created for myself. I'm now of the view that I need everyone in order to achieve a goal. I don't need myself. And you have to partner with operations as much as possible. You can't do this. You can design the greatest plan. You go through the complete WFM end-to-end cycle, and you created the best plan ever made. Someone in operations can simply just change that within a minute, right? And I think over a period of time is where I found myself is it's been difficult to communicate to certain individuals in operations. But I knew I needed to take that step and that leap in order to kind of create, break down that barrier, share something personal, and, find a commonality that we can both really achieve. Because ultimately, everyone wants to achieve the same thing. They want to be successful in their role. They want to move on to, the next best thing. And, but getting someone there to that position is probably the best thing that you can do. And I found it in a lot of, I keep in contact with a lot of my previous colleagues for good reason, because they are wonderful people. That's the relationship that we've built when you come into a business. You need to build a relationship with the operations team. You need to build a relationship with the project team, because ultimately you can't deliver anything without them. So I think probably that has been kind of a learning for me in my younger days, thinking that I needed to wear a suit and tie every day and show up with like it's the New York Stock Exchange, but but I found it that you can still achieve those things with just building a relationship with one another.
Yeah, actually, that we were talking about mentors earlier, and that was, I think, one of the early pieces of advice which actually I didn't immediately respond to, but this particular individual said to me that, Doug, you're great at what you do. You communicate okay, but nobody likes you. Wow. As a young kid, I didn't take that too well. But looking back at what this person was saying was that you live and die by the connections that you make, and building that strong network, not just outside but internally, is the thing that gets you to be listened to. And if you've got the right communication and soft skills in order to turn your plan from numbers into something that people can relate to, that's the winning formula.
That's absolutely.
So that's a great piece of advice to end this podcast on. Eugene, like I say, I think I'm always told off, by the way, for kind of taking these podcasts for too long. But I really could talk to you for hours. You've got some really, really wonderful stories and advice to share. Thank you very much for your time today, Eugene, and really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate the time, and I really hope that you do come and visit us in South Africa fairly soon. Enjoy the sun. Well, you're welcome whenever you reach out to me, and we can enjoy this little sunlight out together.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to doing that. South Africa is definitely on my list of places to come, and we're even looking as well at the moment about potential outsourcing sites there. So who knows where the future?
Yeah, reach out to me. Don't worry.
Alrighty.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to WFM. This podcast is made and produced by André Leitão, Bilge Hentelun, Doug Carsteton, Gonçalo Gomes, and Kim Paz. If you like this show, don't forget to share it with your friends and colleagues. Visit our website, wfm.com, to find more exclusive interviews and WFM content. See you next time. All rights reserved.